Hey everyone, before we dive into today's episode, if you've been enjoying our podcast, take a moment to rate and review. It may seem like a small thing, but our ratings and reviews make a huge difference in the quality of our show. They help us reach more listeners like you so we can continue bringing you more amazing content. So, if you've found inspiration, learned something new, or just love tuning in every week, please rate the Inspired Intentions podcast 5 stars and leave us a review and even share with a friend. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's get into the show.
Hello, Inspired Intentions listeners. Today is a very, very special episode, and we are having an entire celebration. It is our 200th episode of the Inspired Intentions podcast, and there are more people in this podcast booth than I've ever been crammed in with. You hear Alan laughing. Hi, Alan.
Hey.
And before we introduce those guests, I just want to zoom in on the door to get into this podcast booth, which if for many of you, I'm assuming you have not been in our podcast booth. I know we've talked about it a lot. Our podcast booth is actually the back half of Alan's office, and it's divided by 2 giant sliding plywood doors. And Alan, you did something early on that I think was really neat with those doors. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I thought this big plywood wall was really ugly and it was really, really blank. And everybody thought that that was just like the unfinished back half of my tiny office that I had. Nobody knew there was a podcast office back here. So I was trying to think of a way that we could give it a little spice and liven it up a little bit. And so we decided that every employee and guest that got on the podcast got to sign the door. So I bought industrial Sharpies and I asked every time whenever somebody gets done, they get to sign the door. If they've been a guest here, they get to date it and put their name and maybe something fun like hearts or smiley faces. And then employees, I've just got their name on there. And I remember the first time I ever had Sue sign the door, she was very reluctant. She was like one of the first ones.
Well, we've invoked her name, so we should introduce her. We have back on the podcast the founder of Skyterra, Sue Crowell. Hi, Sue.
Hi, you guys.
Hey.
Thanks for having me back.
Of course, we're so happy to have you. We know you love being on the podcast.
I do.
And of course, we have Teresa Osler, our general manager. Hi, Teresa.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. It is so great to have you both back on the podcast. And there's actually another person in the booth who does not have a microphone yet, so we will not introduce him yet.
Yeah, we'll hold off.
But the last time Sue was on our podcast, it was episode number 134. And the last time Teresa was on our podcast, it was episode number 143. And as I said, we're celebrating number 200 today. So it's been a while, and it's great to have you both back on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exciting to be here.
So what are we doing in this episode, Alan?
I like to think of this as just like a celebration episode. Who else better to celebrate than all of us in the same room that have been with Skyterra for so long and just exploring what all that we've done, what all Sue's vision has been over the past 8 years, what all the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears that each and every one of us in this room has done. And then also the same thing for the podcast, because it's 200, we got to celebrate that a little bit too. So
Yes.
Skyterra and the podcast, it's a little celebration episode.
Yes. And we try to, for the most part, when we record our podcast, we try to not assign a specific date because we do record ahead of time for a lot of our episodes. But today is actually a really special date because tomorrow will be the 8th anniversary of Skyterra opening. So today is June 11th. I know this isn't airing until later in the summer, but tomorrow's June 12th, and it will be 8 years since Skyterra opened. And it has been an incredible 8 years.
Oh, it truly has.
So what we'll do today, we want to just talk about kind of the humble beginnings of this podcast and, of course, everything that's changed for the podcast, but even more importantly, how Skyterra has changed and grown over the past 8 years. And so just thinking back, Alan, this first episode of the Inspired Intentions podcast released in a year where nothing happened at all, 2020.
Yeah.
The first episode aired January 6th, 2020. We had not yet moved to our current location.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened Remember what happened when we came in to record that first episode?
Yeah. Our podcast booth didn't look nearly as official at the time. I think in Patrick's words, it was fail cheap, fail fast.
Oh, he loves that.
If we weren't going to make it, we didn't want to invest a bunch of money at first. And the podcast booth was that blue hard insulation that was laying around from the construction of Skyterra Wellness. I taped sheets of it together that was like just high enough for people to like crawl into. It was hilarious.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, right. And then on the inside, we took all of this sound filling density stuff and double-sided taped it to all of the insulation the night before, trying to make kind of a soundproof room because this office was empty. It was super echoey. And we got ready to record like real early that next morning after myself and several other people had been here that night before sticking this stuff to the wall. I came in, it was all on the ground. I got here, I was so nervous to do this first podcast, y'all. I got here like 45 minutes before everybody else, and it was literally all on the ground. I don't know if like just that tape sucked or if the air did it to it, but I was stressed because we're supposed to record in like 45 minutes.
We were undaunted, though.
No, yeah, it was wild.
Yes. And thanks for all the construction of the booth. It really does look pretty official in here.
Yeah, everybody, that's like one of the first things folks say when they walk in here.
Yes. And so for almost a year, we recorded this podcast while Skyterra was literally being built around us. This podcast booth is in the basement of our main building. And, the bathroom was barely functional and construction was happening all around us. And it was just really neat because as we were building this podcast, Skyterra was also being built to move to our current location.
Do you remember we used to do tours, Teresa? We used to bring folks down from the old campus to do a tour of the new building. And part of the tour became, let's go see the podcast room downstairs.
Well, and people wanted to see the lodging. I would have them climb up a ladder.
Oh, I remember that.
Sometimes I think, oh, that was kind of scary.
I know, we didn't even have stairs up to them yet. That was too funny. Yeah.
And so over the course of the last 4.5 years, a lot has changed for Skyterra. And, if you think about our humble beginnings when we were part of a gated community, taking up space in some houses there, and now we're on our own property where we have buildings that we built for what we wanted them to be built for. I mean, really, so I hear Teresa say this all the time, but this was really your vision. And the vision has come to fruition even more so over the past 8 years. And so what's changed, I think, obviously our new location and our outdoor living center, which includes pickleball courts.
We got a fresh archery range out there, the kind of stage area that we bought.
Yes.
Yeah.
The dog run, of course.
The dog run.
And then the natatorium with our indoor pool, which was opened 2 years ago.
Has it been 2 years?
Year and a half.
Wow. So was it always your vision to have an indoor pool?
No. I wanted an outdoor pool.
Really?
I did. But then, after living here for so long, I realized an outdoor pool was not going to work.
What do you mean? Why wouldn't it work?
We live in a rainforest.
Do we?
We do.
I had no idea.
We do indeed. That's one of the mistakes I made with the pickleball courts also. Because you can't play pickleball when it's raining.
Yeah, that's true.
We are figuring that out as Patrick sits and waits for his turn to talk.
Okay, so we've invoked his name.
Oh.
So Patrick Davis, our operations director, is off mic. He will be on mic soon. And the last time you heard from Patrick, it was episode 182, so it was recent. And that was all about how to use AI to improve your life, which is his favorite topic, I think, right now. So Patrick is using AI to create a roof over our pickleball. Just kidding.
Probably
That's a good
design.
idea.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
And then, so our natatorium, of course, our young adult program, Skyterra Young Adult, which is located about 20 minutes away, which takes all of the principles that we teach at Skyterra and just modifies it to a young adult audience, 18 to 29, adding in some therapeutic groups and sessions for them as well. So that has opened.
And that campus is always getting changes to it. It's looking better and better every year.
Yes. And in fact, we just broke ground. We haven't announced this, but we might as well. We just broke ground on our new Culinary Learning Institute, which will be a teaching kitchen right in the middle of campus for our young adult guests to learn culinary skills and meal preparation skills, just to make sure that they leave Skyterra Young Adult with greater skills in the kitchen and being able to feed themselves in a healthy and delicious way.
That's going to be a cool space because it used to just be a regular kitchen, right?
Right.
I'm super excited to go see it. I know that all the guests up there would just go, cook breakfast or lunch or dinner and help the chef out, and they're just doing it in just a normal, actually pretty small size kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's really how Skyterra started, was in a very simple kitchen.
That's true. Yeah. That was a little bit before my time, but you all used to have, a yoga studio space upstairs and the treehouse, right?
Yes, and a fitness was downstairs with our treadmills, and then the kitchen was the culinary center.
Where did everybody eat meals at?
Right there.
Right
kitchen.
there.
That's
in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
That's where we really started. That's the farm style dining.
Mm-hmm.
Those guests in the beginning said, "Oh, don't take away this dining because we love it so much." So then we had to go out and not get round tables, but get really long tables. And we just kept adding, when we did open the culinary center, we just kept adding more long tables.
Oh, yeah.
We had one, then we had two, and then we had to go get a third one, and it was shorter. So then we had to bolster it up.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if you've been a past guest recently, those tables are the ones that are in classroom 1, right?
Yes.
That's
yes.
them.
Yeah.
And they just got a fresh new shine to them.
Yes, they look lovely.
Yeah.
And just to Teresa's point, for any of our listeners who have not yet been to Skyterra, we really having a community dining experience is important to us because so many of our guests travel alone. And being able to feel like you're part of the community as quickly as possible is really helped by the fact that you're eating meals and sharing a communal experience with people that you don't know, and you're doing it right away. And so speaking of delicious food, our garden has grown. Our garden has produced 200 pounds of produce for our guests since the beginning of the year. And, being a remote employee, and I'm here every other month or so, every time I come down to Skyterra, the gardens and the landscaping looks completely different. It's just exploding. And of course, our kitchen tries to use as much of the produce from our garden as possible.
Yeah, that thing always looks awesome. I mean, it's just slowly grown. Patrick has done a great job of working with Jess, who you all have heard from quite a few times on the podcast, to incorporate things like composting. We have a little greenhouse out there now. It's not just produce. There's a lot of beautiful flowers that Jess harvests, and you'll see those around campus. And that's just a part of it.
And Patrick just passed me a note because, again, we have not yet given him a microphone, and that is that the total growing area of all of our in-ground and raised beds is 3,420 square feet plus a 144 square foot greenhouse and 24 fruit trees, which is amazing.
What fruit trees did we get?
We have apples and peaches.
We're all looking at Patrick. What fruit trees did we get?
Apples and peaches and figs.
Ooh, I'm excited.
And then just zooming in a little bit. So we obviously started the podcast in 2020. When COVID hit, Alan, we tried to do a podcast over Zoom. It was not great, but we just wanted to stay consistent. And then we started in 2020, we started adding in our 5-minute focus episodes every other week just to keep the podcast going. And then, of course, we took a break for about a year after Jeff left. And then I just really want to thank Sue and Teresa for encouraging Alan, you and me, to pick it back up. I think neither one of us felt like we had a burning desire to be a podcast host, and just thank you both for encouraging us to stick with it. And I know I've said this to you privately, Alan, but I'm just so proud of this podcast and what you and I have been able to do together. And I love when we're in the booth together. And I just love the perspective that you bring to the episodes that you host. It's just different. And I think that our listeners really appreciate it. And we're seeing it from the numbers of people who are listening. So I really enjoy being your co-host.
Yeah, me too. It's been, I mean, to back up, I couldn't agree more. Like, I don't think either of us had a crazy burning desire when Sue and Teresa were like, you guys need to get this thing rolling
Do it.
again.
They were like, do it. And we're like, oh.
We got to figure this out. Like, Rachel, are you going to do it remotely? And I'm going to record it. We took some figuring out, and we kind of landed on that you and I would split duties as much as we could and bounce back and forth. And it's been a pleasure hosting it back and forth with you. And when we can be in the booth together, it's even better.
Yes.
I can attest to the guest side of things that I can't tell you how many people I've had on campus that organically bring it up to me of how much they have enjoyed the podcast. So they're past guests that have come back, and new guests telling me, your voice sounds familiar. Or that, Rachel, is that the one on the podcast? I hear it all the time. And that's something I never really expected. I don't know why, but I mean, we put our voice out there every single Monday, but it's something that's been a really, really awesome surprise. So I think we're changing lives, making a difference even off campus when people aren't here. It's continuing the journey for the guests that have been here and sparking a journey for folks that haven't ever even stepped foot on campus for us.
Yes, and just the amount of people that we've been able to reach in this format, and the guests that we know, to your point, Alan, who have come here because of the podcast. And I'm thinking specifically of Leah Hope Mancuso, who we have had on this podcast, who listened to every single episode before she decided to book her stay.
Twice.
Twice? Oh my gosh.
On 2 times speed. She listened to
that's
every
right.
episode twice.
She's efficient, organized. Before she decided to book her stay, just to make sure that we were the right place for her, which I'm really proud of.
I think it's so fun that so many of our guests will reference the podcast when they come here.
I know.
And I've even received feedback saying, I wish I'd known about the podcast before I came so that they could have prepared themselves a little bit more. So that's fun.
Well, that's really cool. I have never had anybody say that to me, but that's neat.
So I want to ask you guys what it is that you're most proud of over the past, for you and Sue and Teresa, for really the last 8 years. And Alan, what you're most proud of. I think I said it. What I'm most proud of, I think, is actually this podcast, just because it's not anything that, Alan, you or I came to naturally, and just the fact that we're on episode number 200. We know that not everybody can afford Skyterra, and to be able to put this out for free every single week, I think is just a service. And we work really hard. We put our heart and soul into it, and I think for the most part it shows.
I think it does. That's a really good. It's a good thing to be proud of.
What are you most proud of?
If there's a lot of things that you can be proud of working in a business like this. If it's the folks you work with and seeing the growth and happiness in them. If it's that being employees, the folks I work with, the guests we work with, seeing the change in their lives and seeing them come back over and over again, and seeing new people every single week, and seeing the difference that we're making in their lives. I think, I've been here for a little over 5 years now with Skyterra, and I think that is the one thing that has never changed, is how proud I am of the difference that we make in the people around us. I know could be low-hanging fruit, because I think we could all agree on that. Everybody in this room could, but it's 100% true.
Absolutely.
Teresa, what are you most proud of?
Well, Alan stole my thunder. Because, Sue, when she started to create Skyterra and brought me in, she said, in my 3rd chapter of life, I want to make a difference in people's lives. And that is our mission, to make a difference in people's lives. And one of the things I love the very most about our mission is it's the people. It's not only our guests, it's also our employees. And our guests are so amazing. And you know, when that very first week when we started having guests come, when they'd leave in the afternoon or in the late morning, I would think, oh no, what's going to happen? Because they become like our family. And then in the afternoon, we have new family. And it's so fun because we seem to attract very like-minded people.
Yeah.
And they quickly become just like our family and our employees. You know, we've had a lot of really amazing employees, and it's hard when some people leave, and I think, well, what's going to happen? And then someone else comes who's amazing too and brings their own neat perspective to Skyterra. So really that making a difference in people's lives. I love our mission. I love Sue's mission that she brought to us. And then I just love the difference we make in people's lives, in our guests and our employees.
Yeah.
Sue, what are you most proud of?
I think what I'm most proud of would probably be when we made the determination that we had to move. Most businesses would probably just end the business. After the amount of money that we had chosen to open up at the other campus, it was pretty spectacular to do a pivot and come down, 20 miles and redo it. And keep everybody energized, motivated, and believing in what we had created. Nobody believed that we could recreate as spectacular of a program as we did. And I think we not only reopened, we reopened with 10 more, rooms. We opened with the vision of building a swimming pool, our own swimming pool, with a roof.
Indoor.
We opened with a outdoor living community center that is spectacular, including pickleball courts, archery, basketball, a common area where we can have a lot of fun. And I think just the fact that we could bring in not too many guests, but enough guests that financially we can continue and provide living wages for employees to stay with us for a long period of time, as evidenced today at our all-hands meeting with the celebration of so many employees being here a year or more. It's spectacular. We do make a difference in not only our guests' lives, our lives, and our employees' lives, and that's the reason we're here.
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, well, to celebrate our 8 years and to celebrate our 200th episode, we are going to do a little game. And so we're going to bring Patrick Davis back on to this podcast, and he's going to be the quiz master.
He's been working on his game show voice, everyone, for, he said weeks, right, Patrick? Weeks?
Years.
Years. And just so everybody knows, we do only have 4 mics in this booth, and there are 5 of us. So Rachel and I are going to share a mic. We're going to pass back and forth. But kind of the idea of the game show was just something fun to kind of talk about our history. And we left it up to one of our marketing specialists and Patrick to come up with all the questions. So this is by no way loaded. None of us know any of these answers, any of the 4 of us. And we all know that Sue loves competition. So I thought, why not get her talking with some little bit of competition? Patrick, you ready? Feeling good?
Ready.
You guys ready to answer some questions? See how good we know Skyterra?
Ready.
We're ready.
Rachel?
I am ready.
All right. Other than the very first welcome episode, what was the very first episode of the Inspired Intentions podcast about?
Sleep.
No. I can give you a hint. It has to do.
Is it the triangle of change?
No.
Habits.
I'll give you guys a hint.
Setting intention?
It has to do with a specific time of the year. Think about when the first
New Year's resolutions.
Yes, it was called How to Stick to Your New Year's Resolutions.
Well, that makes sense since it was January 6th.
I feel embarrassed because I hosted that.
You should have known that. So should Alan, though.
Oh,
too.
don't shit on yourself.
So you really don't know these questions.
How many Skyterra guests have we hosted to date?
On the podcast?
No.
Oh, at Skyterra.
Yeah.
1,245.
Nope.
Higher or lower?
Higher.
2,150.
Higher.
So you're saying since 2016, how many people have we had? We're at least 9,000 folks.
Lower.
4,782.
Close.
4,891.
Very close.
4,500?
I think we'll say that who got that? Who started that train of like getting pretty close?
Rachel.
Rachel. Rachel was the closest. So we have hosted 5,142 guests in the history of Skyterra.
Wow. I would have liked to have known that today.
That's amazing.
5,142?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
How many guests have been on the Inspired Intentions podcast to date?
Oh, that's a tough one.
26.
No, way more
15.
than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's way north of that.
55.
I think it's got to be like
Employees?
No guests.
guests.
Oh, no.
So other than the hosts is what I'm assuming the question's talking
Oh,
about.
guests, not just.
So like you would be a guest,
Oh,
Teresa. You
I
would be a
see.
guest, Sue.
Oh, I was thinking it was our Skyterra or young adult guests, but we're all guests.
Yeah, 125. Oh, lower.
92. 70?
Yes.
70 guests on Inspired Intentions.
Can't believe you got that on the first try.
If you can't tell, Patrick's giving us some hand signals in here.
How many ratings does the Inspired Intentions podcast have on Apple Podcasts?
These are really good questions. 27?
240.
111.
150.
Ooh, Sue got very close. 154.
Nice.
All right. This is not a trivia question, but I would love to hear everybody's answer. What is your favorite episode recorded to date? I know that mine is the very first episode that I did.
Ringxiety?
Yes,
That was a good one, Patrick.
I like that one.
I also think that's bold that your favorite episode is one that you are in. I love that. I love that for you.
Well, I can tell you I listened to the one about the pets today. It was really a fun one. And I listened to composting yesterday.
Ellen, I do love the ones that you and I do together, especially when it's a less serious topic like the pets. I think the one that has blown me away, at least most recently, and this could be a recency bias, is when we had Carrie Seymour on and she talked about bravery and vulnerability. That one spoke to me, and I know it spoke to a lot of guests and even friends of mine who listen to the podcast. She was really honest and raw in that one, and I think in a really beautiful way.
Well, it won't surprise you guys much that my favorite episodes were the one with Deb Harrison and Katie Nowicki talking about the power of pickleball.
Yes.
Those were my favorites. And then also Leah's is a pretty inspiring story. I believe she is such a brave, inspired, human being that shares her story with so many people, and not just at Skyterra, but through her social media. She touches thousands and thousands of people's lives. And in that, it makes a difference in so many lives.
It's a great question. when you've edited 200 episodes of something, I think you would think that they start to blur together, but they haven't. I have a lot of favorites. I've to Sue's point, I really enjoyed, and this could be recency bias as well, but the second episode that we did with Leah, like Leah's recap very recently, I really, really enjoyed doing that. It did feel like I was just talking to an old friend because Leah and I have spent a ton of time together, but that one was really, really good. I've really enjoyed just generally doing the dual role podcast with you, Rachel. That's always, yes, it's a little less hard hitting episodes. They're more fun for us, and it's just things that we want to talk about. But I think those have been some of my favorites. The sports one, yeah, Rachel said the sports one. The Blue Ghost Fireflies, that was a really good one that we did recently. I thought that was really fun. When we started getting around like episode 140, and I wish I remembered the exact name of the episode, but we had a reverend from Maine who was a guest. Do you remember who I'm talking about,
Yes,
Teresa?
I do.
For the Maine Game Warden Service, come on here and talk about grief. And I thought that was just a really powerful, beautiful episode. And big thanks to her for coming on and doing that. Those are probably some of my favorites for sure.
I liked the one you and Margie did with talking about just Skyterra and what she's seen over the years that she's been here and kind of the changes in her life.
I just said they all don't run together, but I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
That was a good one. We did the five pillars. We talked about Margie's experience of each particular pillar over her time here and how she's seen it change, but also like how she's seen her life change. And every pillar she finally gave a chance. Like she was like, I'm never going to do yoga the first time she came here. And eventually she tried it. And the same thing for like spending time with me in the recreation department. That was a really fun episode. I forgot about that one.
I love how diversified the podcast has become. You know, it's just different people like Carrie, and we've had Danny on, just really talking about things that you don't necessarily hear in the world. And I think every single one, I can relate to something in that.
Is that the end of the questions, Patrick?
That's it. Thank you guys so much for playing.
Oh, thank you for hosting.
Do we know who won? I think it was me.
See, Sue got one. Rachel got one. Did T get
0?
Oh. All right. So it's tie between Rachel and Sue.
You have a tiebreaker?
I have a tiebreaker for you guys. What was the original name of the black Skyterra Mercedes van that transports our guests to and from campus and takes us on the hikes? Or what is the current name of the white Mercedes van that transports our guests to hikes and from the airport? I know Teresa knows. Vanna White. But the black one for Sue and Rachel. Do you guys know the name? It's famous. No?
No idea.
No idea? All right, I'm going to give you a hint. It's a famous actor name, just like Vanna White, from The Fast and the Furious. He's bald. He's the main character of The Fast and the Furious.
The Rock?
Vin Diesel.
Van Diesel is what we named the original black van.
That's right.
And then we got our new one, and it's Vanna White. So if we ever get another one, I'm out of van names.
Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Avery, for coming up with the questions. Thank you, Patrick, for asking us. Thank you, Alan, for being a great podcast co-host and executive producer. Thank you, Teresa and Sue, for encouraging us. And thank you all for 8 years.
You're welcome. It's amazing.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.